Hey, Gary.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I just let in a call-in user. If you can please unmute yourself and identify who you are. I see you're unmuted, call-in user. Can you identify who you are? Okay, Lori, the call-in user went ahead and left, but I'm going to go ahead and pull up the presentation, and we do have the live stream going as well. Hey, Lori, would you like me to go ahead and run through the roll call, or would you like us to just go ahead and confirm that after the meeting? It looks like, based off of everyone I've let in, we do have a quorum. I think you're on mute.
Oh, you won't have to listen to my hoarse voice. So now we'll just confirm after the meeting. That's fine. All right, so then let's start off with item number 1, which is the certification of a quorum. We're going to do that at the end of the meeting as Emily takes a look at everyone logged in. So then item number 2 is the approval of the minutes. Chad? Okay, who is that?
Bob Day moves to approve.
All right. And was there a second?
Yeah, Ed Collins, second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays out there? All right. We'll move on to item number 3, which is Ryan, discussion and recommendation on federal performance measure targets.
Okay, thank you, Lori. This item is bringing back the performance measure report as a recommendation item from we brought it to you previously. I think it was in January, the draft version of the 2022 performance measure report and updated targets. So I did want to just kind of remind everybody what we're doing and why we're doing it. Is that we are setting regional targets that we do on an annual basis. This is a federal requirement. That kind of rolls out of the federally mandated strategic approach called Transportation Performance Management, or TPM. It's basically a system of information that we use to inform our investment and policy decisions towards achieving those national performance goals. We use this in our performance-based project selection criteria. We set these regional targets on an annual basis as well. We also monitor investment progress and impact, and then incorporate these planning products into our TIP, RTP, and other studies. So it's basically just the regional targets that we're discussing today are just a piece of basically a strategic approach that we've incorporated into every aspect of our planning process. If you go to the next slide, please. Just to remind everyone that the Congress did set out 7 performance measure goal areas: safety, infrastructure condition, congestion reduction, system reliability, freight movement, economic vitality, environmental sustainability, and also reducing project delays. These are the 7 goal areas that Congress has set out that we are, tracking as we go through this process. So Congress set the goal areas, and then our federal partners at FTA and FHWA have set the actual goals and the specific performance measures that we have to track on an annual basis. And then we, both the DOT and the MPOs in the state, set targets. And once we set those targets, we do incorporate those into our plans and programs. If we can go to the next slide, please. So this is a busy slide, but you can get a deeper breakdown into the performance measure report. But basically, this year we are updating, like we do every single year, the safety performance measures, which is PM1, as well as our transit asset management targets and transit safety targets. The transit safety targets are rather new. The first time we did those was last year. So you can see the changes there. If it's in light blue, the target's decreasing, and then we've also got a target increase in the darker blues. And so I'll start with the transit safety targets. Those are going to remain the same with the exception of the beam distance between major mechanical failures. That target is going a little bit lower, and the reason for that is that what we do is we take an average of the transit providers in the region, their targets, and so we didn't have CapMetro's safety targets last year, but we're incorporating them this year. So they are going down a little bit, and the reason for that is the target itself is going down a little bit because CapMetro obviously has a larger system and also has an older system as well. And then we've got transit assets management, which is basically a state of good repair. We do, both of our transit providers in the region do kind of track these a little bit differently. CapMetro sets specific targets, whereas Round Rock sets a range. We've spoken with CapMetro, and we are recommending to adopt the range, which is anything below 15% under the transit asset management. And then the percentage of rail with performance restrictions is going from 1% down to 0%. And that's specifically a CapMetro target because they're the only ones with rail in the region as far as our transit providers go. And then safety, this is the statewide average that we are recommending adopting. This is a larger conversation I did want to kind of talk about. We do have these recommended targets here. The number of fatalities is, the state is targeting a lower percentage, as well as a rate, but we are expecting a higher number of serious fatalities and a number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So we can have a discussion on this. We'll go to the next slide. I do want to talk about the regional targets in relation to the state. This was a request, I think, I'm not sure who made it last time, but we did want to kind of show where we are in relation to the state because we are recommending these state targets. But what does that mean for us? And so we, on this chart here, up to 2020, you can see actually how we are doing in relation to the state. If you compare our regional trends against the proportion of our population as well as vehicle miles traveled across the state, we are running about average where you would expect us to run, if not a little bit lower than the statewide averages. So we're doing a little bit better, not to say that that's a good thing. But that was just kind of the key takeaway of this graph. You can look and see at the actual numbers themselves. And then on the next slide, I do want to kind of talk about what all this means and what we're doing as far as these targets. So, we talk about these targets every single year. They do help us measure success, but it really comes down to really the actionable investment decisions that we can do as an MPO. And so what we've done and what we're going to do is we are developing several tools and resources to help both the local governments with real-time information, but we're also doing an in-depth analysis regarding safety issues in the regions to kind of help the decision-making process, not just on a regional basis, but on the local governments as well, who are really kind of spearheading what we can do. Our safety dashboard, which is actually where I got the information on the previous slide from, will go live in May. And y'all have had a chance to look at that, but it's incredibly useful information in there. We're also going to incorporate the performance measures into that dashboard. And then we've got a regional state of safety report that we are currently developing. I think the last one we did was in 21. But basically, this does a deep dive into all of the crashes in the region for a specific year. It's an incredible look at, and it takes that deep dive into, I think it's about 19 different areas, whether it's alcohol-related drunk driving, if it's distracted driving, things like that. It does a really deep dive on the statistics of that in the region. And then finally, one of the things I'm most excited about is that we do have a regional traffic safety plan that we are developing. We're going to bring this back to the TAC probably later this year. We are updating all of the numbers. As you know, the pandemic kind of changed the way safety is. The issues we're having in the region kind of, went to overdrive. We're trending in the wrong direction, which is the one discussion we constantly have, is that fatalities have gone up, not just here in our region, but across the state and across the region. And so what we're doing, we're taking a deep dive into that to incorporate into the regional traffic safety plan. But what that safety plan really is it gives a practical recommendation list of things that we can actually do as an MPO, specific projects and actually have cost estimates assigned to them of what we can actually do to help. It also talks about I think it's the 5 E's, talking about the engineering, enforcement, equity, and there's a couple of other things that we look at when it comes to how do we solve safety in the region. So just wanted to kind of point that out, that we are, kind of strengthening our position as an MPO on what we can do for safety. So, there's a lot of practical things that are going to come out of that, because that is always the big discussion about the safety targets is what are we doing about it. And this will lay out that roadmap for us for what we can do about it, and then the board can decide what they want to invest in and how to approach that, and how we can partner with local governments, because I do think at the end of the day that this is the local governments really have the frontline defense when it comes to fatalities in the region. We can play a major supporting role in that, both with data and project-specific things and funding. So we just want to kind of flesh out that role. But that's really it. So we are, again, I guess the other important thing that's coming out of the regional traffic safety plan in relation to the targets is that we have in the past adopted these state safety targets verbatim. It just seems like the appropriate thing to do as we're feeling out this new target setting process. What does it mean? But the safety plan really does lays out a very specific target plan to reach that supports Road to Zero, which is TxDOT's goal of having traffic fatalities by 2035 and reducing them to zero by 2050. And so we actually set targets all the way out to 2050 and extrapolate exactly what we need to be hitting target-wise to achieve that goal. So it's pretty aggressive, and that's going to be laid out in the traffic safety plan as well. So when we go through this item next year, I do believe we will be recommending our own regionally specific developed targets, but that'll be part of the further discussion later this summer. But for this year, we are recommending the state's targets once again, and they're included in your report. So with that, I'll conclude the presentation, take any questions you may have, and we'll ask for a recommendation from the Technical Advisory Committee to recommend to the Policy Board to adopt the updated performance measures. Thank you.
All right, I see we have a couple questions. Ed, I think your hand was up first.
Yes, thank you, Ryan, for a good report. I think, these documents become very useful for local governments to access information. I was wondering if there's opportunity for those reports that you mentioned, that a link be placed in the report. So if somebody's looking at the report, they say, oh, this is where I can find this information. I noticed, you had 2 reports that were, I guess, being done by TTI, but maybe good just to be able to have a kind of a one-stop source so you can go in there and take a look at the information if you want to dive deeper into the information that's being gathered.
So Ed, are you thinking a link to the dashboard in the report?
Yeah, I know the dashboard's not there yet, but there's 2 different reports that Ryan mentioned. That one is I guess still under development, and the other is the one that had like 16 or 19 different areas that you can look into. There, he mentioned that was a report that they had already finished. But yes, whenever possible, if we could have links to those within these reports, it makes it easier for the reader to go back in if he wants to dive deeper into the information that'd be available easily instead of having to search through the website.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Ed, and we'll definitely, everything will be linked together once they're published. The safety plan and the safety report, the regional safety annual report will be probably wrapped up with the most recent numbers towards the end of the summer. We'll link everything together, and on the website where the performance measure report is, along with the dashboard, we'll make sure that everything's available and kind of cross-linked, so you won't have any trouble finding anything once it's all ready to go, for sure.
Right. Thank you.
That's a good point. Thank you.
All right, Charlie?
Ryan, you just answered one of the questions I had, is when the traffic safety plan would be completed. Do you expect there to be a list of projects in that plan, or is it more goals, objectives?
It's both.
Performance
It has a
measures.
it's got the goals and objectives, but there is a specific plan or list of projects that with cost estimates associated with them that will be available. I've got a draft that I'm looking through. I mean, there's a couple of studies, management studies, but and a few other things like intersection improvements and things like that. So there is a very specific list that's available in the draft plan.
So,
Okay,
Charlie,
that's
are you asking about? Charlie, I'm sorry. Are you asking if there will be? Are you asking if there will be specific projects, say for like, I'm just making something up, intersection improvements at Anderson Mill and Palmer Lane? Or are you just asking, is it a generic type of, if we do grade separations, but it's not a specific thing?
Well, I heard Ryan say cost estimate, so I think it would go further. Yeah, that's exactly where I'm headed. Like a decile at Howard intersection.
Okay.
What's the improvement?
Okay.
What's the cost? Something that we could use for a future project call at CAMPO.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I mean, and that was one of the focuses of the upcoming plan, is just to have a really practical, roadmap of what can we actually do right now. And a lot of that is, looking at very specific things and then identifying, and it also identifies a high injury network as well. So we can use that, to kind of look where we need to be looking and figure out how to solve these issues. So I think you'll be happy. It's good. It's
Charlie, one of the things.
How did you?
Charlie, one of the things your question just reminded me of. So we're about to put out the RFP for the bottlenecks study pretty soon, and that's a lot about interchanges and intersections.
It is out. Closing.
Yes. It's closing a week, so it's out on the street now. So one of the things that we can do and we will do is to crosswalk that study work with the safety report work where those things are being identified.
Okay, and then to what level of functional class are you going down to collector, or is it all major arterials, or any idea yet on what you're looking at?
I thought we were going down to minor arterial at least, but I'm looking at y'all.
We're talking about the safety plan or bottleneck study?
Talking about bottlenecks. At least I think we're talking about bottlenecks.
Oh.
Bottlenecks, I think we said major arterial. It's all on system.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the big one.
Did you say?
Did you hear that, Charlie? It was major.
Okay, on the off system, right? Is what I heard.
That's right.
And that's also for the traffic safety plan?
that I am not sure. I think that goes much further down. I think it
goes down.
Yeah, it goes way down. I think it's just based on where, where the fatalities are happening, regardless of the facility at this point.
That's good.
So, yeah, it's going to be a good resource, I think, especially for local governments that need to, tackle this stuff. It'll definitely create that foundational support and data needed, to kind of figure out what we need to do. So.
For the bottlenecks and interchanges, we really, it's not a huge budget for that project, so we really had to kind of apply a filter there. Otherwise, just the sheer number of them would destroy the budget there pretty quickly. So that's why we're looking at kind of higher functional classes there on that one.
Thank you.
All right, Cole?
So I have a couple questions. But first, I know we're all busy, but is there a committee of people on the development of the plan, the safety plan?
There was, I can get you some more information on that, but it was developed with like with a consortium of safety folks in the region. I think it was spun off of the city. The district has a safety committee that they work off of, and I know like a couple of folks in the city are on that, but it's spun out of that. But there's some folks from Austin Public Health. I think Joel Meyer from ATD. I'm just looking at the list right now. Some TTI folks, and then the sheriff's office at Travis County, City of Austin EMS as well. So there's a list. It was there was a committee that was involved in developing this draft.
Okay,
We can
that sounds.
we can see the list, Cole.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And then I guess my suggestion off of that was that, you know, the level of influence or our ability as the TAC to be able to review it and provide meaningful input before it's finalized is, at least from my perspective, something that may be beneficial from this body. If other people are equally as interested, I hope that it's not just presented to us, but that there's an opportunity to actually review it and influence it.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and that's our intent later in the summer, is just to really update the numbers as far as the most recent numbers from the pandemic and everything like that. So just going through that, but we absolutely want your feedback on it. So we will certainly be bringing that back for meaningful feedback, and anything y'all think y'all want to add or anything like that, we'll have that discussion. So it will certainly not be just a information item.
Yeah, it'll follow a normal process, Cole. It'll come to the TAC at least twice before it goes to the board.
Okay, that sounds good. And then it was also encouraging to hear that the targets would be updated based on this regional work. So that was something that I was hoping to hear. But also I was curious in the numbers that the 2021 actuals weren't available at this time. Do we know if we have them or when we'll have them to be able to compare where we are against the 2021 target? Because the original request was really about understanding the targets in comparison to the actuals, and we only see the 2021 target but no actual.
Yeah, it's my understanding the 2021 data usually comes out, I think, around the summer, early summer. It takes about 4 or 5 months for them to kind of clean up and crunch the data, if I understand it.
Yeah, there's always a lag, but I don't know the exact date, Cole.
Okay. And then,
but we should have those updated numbers, at least for the transportation plan. That's part of it that we'll bring back to you. So we can certainly have that discussion later on in the summer with those numbers.
Okay. And then last question is there any significant consequence of us not meeting an aggressive target?
Good question, Cole. Right now, there's nothing in the law that says that. Sort of thinking ahead a little bit, I am a little concerned that if we set a really aggressive target and we don't meet it with all these discretionary grant programs out there, it could be held against us in the review of that. But, you know, nobody said that.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Cole. Anybody else have a question? All right. Seeing none, do I have a motion to make a recommendation to submit this to the policy board?
This is Ed Collins. I'll make that recommendation.
Second?
Gary Hunter, so moved. Second.
Right. How about since, if anyone is opposed to this or have concerns, please indicate now. All right, based upon that, unanimous, we'll move forward.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Ryan, you're still up with a presentation and discussion on the tip.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So this item is the information item on the update to the Transportation Improvement Program. As everyone pretty well knows, it's a fiscally constrained program that's got committed funds expected to be implemented over the next 4 years, but that we do update and adopt a new tip every 2 years. Even though we amend it on a regular basis, it's always up to date. We do adopt a new version of it every 2 years. And for anyone new on the TAC, the TIP does provide the regional authorization for any projects that are funded through federal surface transportation programs. That includes anything that comes through the Federal Highway Administration or the Federal Transit Administration. These include our formula programs and also the discretionary programs. They do have to be listed and approved by the policy board in the Transportation Improvement Program in order for those funds to be released to the project sponsors in the specific projects. Go to the next slide. One thing I do just want to kind of take a step back, and I know I mentioned this last time, is really the relationship between the Regional Transportation Plan and the TIP. I feel like oftentimes sometimes they can get confused or, what their roles are and what function they provide. But, the Regional Transportation Plan is it looks over a 20-year horizon. We adopt that every 5 years as opposed to every 2 years with the TIP. But the plan crucially provides environmental clearance eligibility through the NEPA process, as well as federal funding eligibility for those discretionary grant programs. And then once funding is actually committed through any number of processes, it can either be through, the policy board selecting CAT 7 or Surface Transportation Block Grant funding, or it could be, the commission, or if FTA is selecting a project for the discretionary program, a local project, that's when they go into the TIP. It's when they receive that commitment of transportation funding. They get submitted for the TIP, and then that gets approved by the policy board, which allows it to move forward with the federal funding authorization, as well as letting certification. So there's crucial points, and they play crucial roles, but oftentimes I just think it's a good opportunity to kind of just talk about the differences between the two and how they work together. Go to the next slide. So this tip, we've actually got a pretty unique tip this year. I think it's the largest tip that we've ever had as far as projects go. And I think it's going to get larger as we go through the 2-year life cycle of this tip, as we have some specifically Project Connect going through the Capital Investments Grant Program. But there's a lot of funding, especially with the passing of the IIJA as well, and discretionary grants going out, that this is just really the starting point for the next 2 years. It's just been really interesting because we have only 14 individually listed projects, which is the least that we've ever had, but it's also the largest as far as funding goes. So just to remind everyone, the individual projects on the highway side are any projects that fall under the federal highway, which is 23 USC, but any federal highway programs, that includes all their bike ped programs and things like that as well, will fall under the highway projects listings. And so we've got 14 individually listed highway projects currently in this draft TIP, totaling over $5 billion in funding. Obviously, the big kahuna is the I-35 Capital Express project. This is the central portion. The north and south portions of I-35 have let in this previous TIP. And then we've got the 183 frontage roads up in Cedar Park. And then we've also got some SCBG-funded local projects that are letting in that weird gap area where it might be in the new TIP, might be in the old. So we've included them in the new TIP just to ensure that should they let at some point around September, October, that they do have that approval in the TIP. So that's just the highway projects. Anyways, we can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So on the transit side, these are any projects that are funded through programs under 49 USC Chapter 53. That's the Public Transportation Code. So anything that falls under that in the federal, usually fall under the Federal Transit Administration, programs like that. We do have 30 individually listed transit projects that are totaling over $340 million in funding. The majority of that funding is operating expenses for both Cap Metro, Round Rock, and San Marcos. We're also including Project Connect's locally funded phases of the orange and blue lines. We do have a local funding section or locally funded project section in the TIP, but we do have Project Connect's locally funded phases in the individual listings, and that's because they are going through a federal funding grant process now. They haven't received the federal funds yet, but as they go through that process, we just wanted to show those phases in the individual listings. If you go to the next slide, please. So in addition to those individual listings, now the individual listings are approved specifically by Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration staff, but we do have some additional listings and sections in the TIP that I just want to briefly run through. The group projects are projects that are not of appropriate scale for individual identification. And these projects, we actually have, I want to say it's about $300 million worth of projects in groups. So, yeah, and these are, it's over I want to say it's 500 or so projects that are listed, that are groups in this section. So when we talk about our safety programs, our highway maintenance programs, as well as our bike ped facilities, projects that are going through that, these are all groups. So these are projects that are going to go through a more streamlined approval process on the administrative side. But I just want to point that out because a lot of, when you look at the individual listings on these projects, you don't see a lot of safety projects and things like that. They are included in the groups, so they're important projects, so I just wanted to point that out. And then we've got a local project section. These are projects that have been requested for inclusion, and they do have committed funding from local sources for all of their phases. These projects aren't subject to federal authorization requirements, but we did want to include them in the TIP just for public, purposes for the public and transparency and things like that. And then should they receive federal funding in the future, at least they're listed in the TIP already. And then finally, we have the project development list. This is a list that projects that are moving through the early development process. This includes engineering and environmental phases. And this is actually a list, this includes all of the deferred projects, and then most of the other projects are projects that TxDOT is taking through the early development process, and as part of their environmental process, they are required to be on this list. And then finally, we have some additional sections that include the performance measures and a link to the performance measure report that we talked about in the previous item, administrative policies, our self-certification, and then I've linked some additional resources in there as well, such as the UTP and the STIP, and then also direct links to FTA and FHWA's funding programs. So if you ever want to do a deep dive, that information is available there. And then on the next slide, I just want the high-level schedule. Basically, we're kicking this off with this information item here today. We're going to take it out for public outreach. It started on Friday, which Joyce is going to talk about in the next, or Emily is going to talk about in the next slide. And then we're going to be doing a public hearing and an information item at the Transportation Policy Board meeting in April. We'll bring it back to the TAC for recommendation later next month. And then potential action in May from the policy board. And at that point, it'll just go through we'll submit it to the E-STIP. The STIP public hearing will be in August, and then the new TIP will potentially become active as early as September of 2022. So a couple other things, we're still reviewing the TIP, the draft TIP. Lori, I've made a couple of fixes on what we talked about on Friday. And then there's a couple of, we'll probably add some additional information to the TIP draft as well, just like a glossary. I think there's a white space you see on the individual listings for the highway projects. I'm going to use that to put some information just to make it, easier to read. But otherwise, it's pretty, standard. I think this is the first TIP we've had that we haven't either had a project call or a deferral process tied to it. So, it's kind of a clean and straight process. But if you have any questions about the process or the projects within it, please let me know. And then I'll let Emily talk about the public involvement real quick.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. So, as you mentioned, our public comment period began on March 25th, last Friday, and it will go through April 25th, Monday, April 25th. We have our typical online open house, and we are also, with the pandemic, we started accepting voicemail comments, so we're continuing that through this process. We accept email comments, voicemail comments, and mail and fax comments. And we also have 4 in-person opportunities. Ryan briefly mentioned our first in-person opportunity, which is before the policy board meeting on April 11th. We'll have an open house from 10:30 to 1:30 p.m., and then the public hearing will be held during the policy board meeting. And then we have an opportunity in Cedar Park on April 12th, an opportunity in Central Austin on the 18th of April, and an opportunity in Buda on April 19th. And all that information that will be available at the in-person open houses is available through our online open house at campotexas.org/get-involved. We also are going to try a new curbside drive-up opportunity for people who aren't quite ready to come inside the building. We'll have a QR code that links to our online open house, and if anyone has questions, they can call that number or speak with a person at a socially distanced, in a socially distanced manner. With that, I will pass any questions.
All right, well, it's great. I think the TAC had previously asked for having the public input happen before we made our final recommendation. So it looks like this time we're right there and we'll have most of that information. So I think we have a couple questions. Cole, is your hand still up from last time, or do you have a new question? Okay, and then I guess it's Ed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I did notice that also, Lori, about the public involvement phase, kind of getting the opportunity for the TAC to hear what they've received thus far. One thing that I was, look at from a public perspective, particularly on public involvement, is that the MPO number or CSJs, they really are meaningless to the public. And, I looked at the maps and what's also in the public involvement phase, or the presentation I thought is really good that you have there. But I think, look at it from a perspective of somebody who doesn't really know what's going on. So like, for example, Slaughter Lane, I know that's a product in there, but I'm just looking at the map, instead of putting the MPO ID number, why don't we just say Slaughter Lane? Something simple as that. And also on the red and blue line for transit, why don't we just call it red line and blue line? Those little simple things I think help the public, and as opposed to saying, okay, what is this? And they have to go and use the decoder ring to figure out where the product is in the tip. If we give them a little bit of information, that's on the maps and also during the presentations, I think it goes a lot more to being, one to say that we're accepting of public comments in a way that we kind of engage them to look at it not from a technical perspective, but as a general public person that's looking at the maps and may want to make some good comments, good or bad, for the project. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Ed. Thank you.
All right, Charlie?
Just a quick question to Ryan. I think in the last tip, all the TAPS projects were pulled out, listed individually. In this, I guess, is a change in this tip that you're putting them in the group projects?
Yeah, that was a thing. We actually didn't have authorization to do that previously. I think it was in February of 21. Yeah, February 21, FHWA and FTA decided that we could finally group TASA projects. And especially given the time crunch that TASA projects are usually on, we decided to group them so to help them get that AFA faster and get those funds obligated. So, and I think they did that just to help with the fiscal constraints. I don't know if y'all recall, the last tip was held up because of fiscal constraint issues. And so they loosened up the grouping, made it a little more flexible for MPOs to group projects at least. And that's one of the things actually I forgot to mention is that as an MPO, we're probably the largest MPO because we are not, because we are entertainment, that we are able to group most everything. That's not a privilege that a lot of MPOs have. And so that's one thing I think was important to take advantage of this time around. But long answer, but yes, that's something that has changed. So we are grouping TAPSA projects from now on.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you.
Lori, I do, this Ed Collins. I do have one more comment. I've brought this up before, is that this once in every couple of year opportunity that the region has to talk about, what we're doing to help transportation in the area. By looking at the tip, you really don't get that sense of feel. But for example, say, we have how many $1 billion investment going on I-35. That's a big thing. I know Ryan did mention it during his presentation, but if we have some of that come out in our public hearing or public hearing documents, it can say, we are investing in our transportation infrastructure. The thing with the CAMPO Metro projects and the blue and orange line, that's just the planning portion of it. I don't want to mislead people, say we're going to build that within this time frame. I had to kind of go back and look at the information to make sure I knew what why it was in the tip. So that maybe say we're having this many millions of dollars that are being done now, so that when the time does come, then we're going to have additional products that are going to actually build the orange line and the blue line. So I think opportunity to kind of tell the story is sometimes we miss that point in our presentations.
That's a good point. And I think that was something I think we even talked about last Friday with Lori. It's just like this tip, does not include everything. It's a snapshot of what's happening in this time frame, but it also doesn't include everything that's under construction right now, because I think the interesting thing is we have so many major projects that have either let or are letting this year. That includes 183, the general purpose lanes, and then the toll lanes, or the managed lanes, that are going up to Cedar Park, the Oak Hill Y, and then the BRT lines that are supposed to be done, which may end up being rolled up into the TIP, but the BRT lines as well from Project Connect. So as far as the larger story, there's so much going on in this region. I think that's a good point, and I'll make sure that we at least mention it to the policy board at the public hearing, talk about everything that's going on like right now, and that includes the north and south portion as well. And then 183 just got finished up. So I mean, we're a busy region, so it's kind of, I think to your point that the tip doesn't show everything. So
Brian, there's a question from Cap Metro on there. They're asking about the two lines that we were amending in for the grant. Mm-hmm. And they're saying they're not seeing it. You just need to explain to them what.
Yeah. So I think the question is the Metro Rapid Projects Expo in Pleasant Valley. They're in the current TIP, the 2021 to 2024, and those are being submitted in the STIP. I think next month in April. They're not part of this TIP because those were fiscal year 2022. This upcoming TIP is from 2023 to 2026. Now, if that delays, we do need to roll those two projects over, and that's what I mentioned earlier. So it just depends on when those projects are scheduled to let and receive those federal funds, what fiscal year.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Thank you for explaining that. This is Nadia from Cap Metro.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Thanks for those good comments. Okay, moving on to item number 5, presentation on Smart Track initiative.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Mike Adiano with the Austin District Engineer. I'm here with Heidi Roth from CTR with the University of Texas, and we're going to give you a brief update on what we're doing with Smart Track. Just an update on how to basically for one. Can you see the screen for one, Lori?
Yes, we can.
I'll make sure. Just to kind of define the problem, the mobility sector is kind of being disrupted by 4 megatrends. Automation, we all know about, and you can see the penetration rate there from that graph is growing exponentially. With more recent supply chain issues and shortage of CDL drivers, the market for self-driving freight is actually growing even faster. Connection, if you had a car for at least 10 years, your car is somewhat connected as it is. And so as time goes, that connectivity with modern cars is getting more and more advanced. Electrification, everybody sees all the gas prices go up and spike. And so manufacturing for electric vehicles is also growing with that, especially locally with Tesla and other manufacturers moving into the region. Data sharing, it's becoming its own commodity. I mean, almost like Bitcoin. Data in itself is kind of a commodity with especially with all the cloud services. And so the market for data sharing and those things are becoming a big part of competition, and there's a lot of competition to leverage that data. In short, it's not whether the disruptions are coming, but they're here already. And so are we ready for it? And that's a question we're asking around here in Texas. I know everybody else is, because transportation is getting very highly complex, and it's going to get more complex with time. That will require us as public agencies to develop ways to vet and validate and test all these emerging technologies so they can safely operate on our system and to realize the benefits that they all bring to the table. As a public sector, we're kind of playing catch up. I think a long time ago, about a decade ago, the private sector started driving what transportation was going to look like. But I think we're here at the right time, and we have not only have a chance to catch up, but I think we have a chance to lead. I shared this last time, so I'm going to go over it real briefly. There's a lot of benefits to doing all this together. I mean, what I mean by together, I mean everyone. Because all these policies and goals from a regional approach will enable technology solutions for all roadway classifications, from local roadways to interstates. And this will require input and commitment from all of our regional partners here at CAMPO to see those future needs met. Strategic deployment and phase programming will provide continuity and the optimization of our resources. And then standard review of those vendors will promote competition and transparency, which benefits not only us, but also the private sector. Again, data sharing, you're going to hear it again and again, provides new opportunities to effectively enhance traffic safety and incident management. And it's also an untapped resource for us, not only on data-driven solutions, but there's also some alternative revenue opportunities that we're also looking at. If we don't do it, well, if we don't do it and we all do it separately, we may be incompatible across the region. And so what we need is, what we're like looking, lots of DOTs have kind of jumped out there already into the technology world and found that this technology becomes obsolete really quick, or it didn't really work out as they intended. So a regional approach and gathering our resources and expertise together and partnering with the private industry will help us select the right solutions, technology solutions at the right time. Now that we have this little low of deferred projects, actually, it's kind of a blessing because it gives a little time. We do have test beds on 130, and we're going to do some experiments on NOPAC. And so those things can carry over into other corridors and help us develop technology solutions as we go forward and develop new projects. One of our primary roles as a public agency is to set the public infrastructure platform to encourage others, to the private sector to meet us there in the middle. One of our key roles is to make sure that the overall transportation market, which is a complex ecosystem, that we can bring all those things together. As you can imagine, Austin has become the epicenter for technology. So all of these entities are here locally, and we can actually leverage all of their expertise. And as a regional transportation group, we can offer that leadership to do that. So we call it the ACES disruptions: automation, connectivity, electrification, and data sharing. These are actually new markets that offer fresh new products. The challenge is to execute it in a regional manner that's operable, that maintains transparency and leverages the effective technologies of the day, and being flexible and adaptable. A regional plan not only needs guidelines and protocols, but it needs a vetting system so that we can get the best technologies out there for our region. Are the slides not moving quick enough, Lori?
Yeah, they're lagging just a little bit behind your
Okay.
talk.
I know I talk fast, so. So what we're proposing is actually a testing validation center called Smart Track. It's a three-tiered system. So we need that effective validation solution for all of us as transportation agencies to discern the full potential of these technologies. This three-tiered vetting system to evaluate these technologies would look at various use cases that we would come together as a group to agree on that needs to be looked at. for all of our roadways from local roads to interstates and to simulate transportation conditions. Smart Track would feature a closed and semi-closed and open testbed system that we'll describe in a little bit. The open testbed system, or Tier 3, would evaluate technologies on actual public roads, which actually would make it unique that all this combination would occur. Waiting for the slide to transition. Several state institutions across the U.S. have already have their own testing solutions and validation strategies for these technologies. We've investigated how these centers were created and funded and operated. The good thing is we get to learn from their experience. In this case, being first is not necessarily a good thing because there's been a lot of challenges on getting those, get traction on those. But we did identify 4 centers we thought offered the best implementation evaluation that we could for Smart Track. 2 of them are Gomentum and ACM, which offer a variety of testing modules and cooperate with public sector on validation. But these 2 centers are privately owned and privately funded. ACM, it does partner with Michigan DOT, but much of its operation and management is private. There is but a lag. SunTrax, this newly inaugurated in Florida, is a collaboration with Florida DOT to focus on autonomous vehicles. The Virginia model also has an open test bed that is run by Virginia DOT. Again, these things offer examples of how TxDOT and CAMPO can partner together with the University of Texas to publicly fund this. All testing validation centers are seen to be closed or not include public roadways like we're proposing. So this is how it looks like, and this is how our initial concept design looks like. TxDOT's been collaborating with CTR on this concept, along with our consultant partners like Transtech and Tilta, to come up with these conceptual ideas. The idea is to repurpose the Pickle Research Center, located at Burnett and what's Cross Street? Baker. Yeah, I used to work there. I should know where those streets are. All 3 tiers can simulate transportation conditions for urban city streets, all the way to high-speed interstate roadways. This experimental design allows efficient validation of technology in a diverse variety of environments prior to mass rollout. So Tier 1, this is a completely closed test bed that offers 5 modules that test technology from an early phase in a safe and closed environment. This stage of testing focuses on safe operation of CAV technology and vehicles, including rural road safety testing, critical curve testing, wet pavement surface conditions, and 2-way traffic simulations, to just name a few. It would also induce situational testing to evaluate the technology's response to losing signals from broadband and other communication roadside units. And it also induces varying roadway conditions, such as different lane markings or the lack of delineation and lane markings to have some critical conditions evaluated. If whatever technology solution passes that hurdle, we allow it to go to a semi-closed test bed in Tier 2, which uses parts of the campus with existing roadway and integrates testing and validation of new technologies with daily campus life. So there's buses and cars and students and researchers that work in that area. There's even proposals to kind of go off campus, and we're still looking at those situations like the domain or other areas around there. So this stage will basically mix regular existing traffic with these technology solutions. Vehicle and technology will encounter various roadway conditions in this Tier 2 setup, because there's ditch and curb sections, no marking, surface types, various distresses, and all the different types of traffic characteristics. So Tier 3 is kind of the final hurdle that OEM or vendor would have to pass through. the Pickle Resource Center is kind of uniquely located in proximity of interstates and freeways and tollways of major arterials in a major metropolitan area. So kind of as like Frank Sinatra said, if you can't make it on Tier 3, you can't make it anywhere, because this is the ultimate test on any technology. The open testbed allows testing and validation of real life scenarios for mature technologies just before they're ready for public deployment. This tier evaluates all the Tier 1 and Tier 2 demands in a real world situation, but on high volume arterials and interstate conditions. This tier will evaluate a number of conflict points a driver would encounter in an everyday life, whether it's entering, exiting, changing lanes on major roadways. And once the technology solution is vetted and cleared through these 3 tiers of testing, so a couple of great things happen. And then more importantly, we get the community and the driving public to start to trust these proven concepts and how to interact with these new technologies. So SmartTrack serves as a technical tool to improve and modernize mobility in our area. The collective regional approach to align regional goals and resources to standardize our deployment is an original concept and has potential to become a national blueprint. A platform establishes a platform for both private and public sector collaboration to improve and innovate and deploy this type of technology. This collective approach also offers data sharing opportunities, which will also, and what it also does, eliminates wasted individual efforts that we all as agencies are looking at this stuff. And so it kind of consolidates our efforts and eliminates redundant efforts and a waste of resources. In the long term, a regional approach will provide us the continuity, adaptability, and sustainability that we would need. SmartTrack will be built and managed primarily by the public sector agencies, whose main goals will be directly and collectively, collected and addressed, including TxDOT, CAMPO, Cap Metro, and the RMA. And so the use cases, the testing protocols, and the approved requirements can be crafted by a subcommittee by CAMPO or a regional review board. CTR, the University of Texas at Austin, will manage and operate SmartTrack. So as a public university and public agency, they basically offer management and operation in a fairly impartial and independent way, unlike a lot of the privately operated centers around the country. This will also help us as public agencies to have that public trust of the results coming out of this testing bed and validation center. How is this feasible? Is feasible in concept? I think Central Texas has, as I said, has become the epicenter for technology innovation. So the Austin region, offers a vibrant environment of full potential customers and partnerships. This will be a fee-based center for the University of Texas to operate. We would also hopefully pay into that as a partner and as a customer. There's large presence of tech companies, as you know, in the region that even strengthens the need for a test track. And with the influx of new industries, for example, I had a meeting this morning with a self-driving freight manufacturing company. They're coming into the region. This is going to continue to happen. So with all the convergence of all these players in the transportation technology industry, which positions Central Texas as a leader nationally. So next steps, this is kind of the schedule we've given ourselves to get to SmartTrack to the finish line. We already have a layout and location, and we're solidifying those. The conceptual design and business plan form will be the basis of that will be the next steps of SmartTrack. TxDOT is committed to supporting this effort. We've already provided a lot of the initial concept development, and we put forth financial resources for engineering services for the initial conceptual design. The business plan and schematic design and requirements and the validation strategy could be determined by and should be determined by the CAMPO's TAC committee or subcommittee for addressing emerging technologies. CAMPO partners will also have to explore opportunities to obtain grants and identify funding for the construction and fund for the operation of the center to help us with this long-term project. So what I'm proposing today as far as next steps is first and foremost, possibly developing a regional emerging technology subcommittee out of this out of the TAC committee to create a framework of agreement on aligning vision and goals, to develop a standard protocols for all jurisdictions, to identify use cases and develop vetting criteria for acceptance of all technology, to explore and recommend grant and funding opportunities for Smart Track. Would also like to be a public-private partnership, and then hopefully this subcommittee can establish a transportation technology advisory board. I know CTR is partnering with our CAV work group here and has that connection there. But what this group is basically non-competing private industry in the technology world that are subject matter experts when it comes to AI, software, chip supply, manufacturing, telecom and utility providers. They can help us vet the outcomes that we're desiring out of technology. It's really something new to us. And so they can be an advisory group to us to give us a feasibility of the deployment and the use cases we're looking at, and also the performance criteria that we're requiring. They can advise us how to design and operate Smart Track, not only just for us, but for the private sector. That could be a place where they can go and basically test their technology and then tap us on the shoulder when they're ready for tryouts. So they'll help us refine those requirements and all the contracting that we have to do in the technology solutions. They wouldn't be precluded for anything because they're not really competing for our contracts. Also would recommend for the long term establishing some type of regional review panel to govern and execute a regional emerging technology plan and policy. They would enforce a series of objectives, tiered requirements before accepting technology to be deployed on public roadways. All agencies will have input into the development of these testing criteria, especially for all jurisdictions, all roadway classifications. And this will just give us some continuity in all of this. With that said, I'm going to stop talking and I've blabbed for long enough. Any questions?
Wow, Mike, real brain dump there. Anybody have any questions right off the bat?
This is Ed Collins. I was wondering, this is kind of almost more of a policy issue. If the board wanted us to delve into something like this, so just wonder if Ashby has any insight for us on that.
I think any subcommittee has to go to the policy board, doesn't it, Ashby?
Yeah, my recollection of the bylaws, Lori, is that the TAC can form ad hoc subcommittees, but any official committee has to be approved by the board.
So I guess, Mike, I want to restate this in a summary form. So TxDOT has been working with UT Austin to get ahead of these emergency technologies and how it's going to affect our region. So to that end, we've landed on a Smart Track process, and TxDOT has funded it. It's anticipated that the Pickle Research Center would obtain private funding also. But the concept is that in order to build it and actually continue to use it over time, TxDOT anticipates funding not only coming from TxDOT, but also the regional entities through CAMPO grants or other grants to help develop this and push it forward. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, Laurie. And so I was going to, subsequent to this meeting, I was going to push out a summary of exactly what you talked about and what all that would entail, and then all the proposed action items on how to set up the governance for this. So Heidi has something to say.
Hi, Heidi Ross with UT Center for Transportation Research. I was just going to add that we've already obtained approval from UT to use the Pickle Research Site for the Smart Track. And we would anticipate also funding it through research dollars as well as, hopefully getting some donors from UT who are interested in funding this. So it would be a combination of private sector funds, regional transportation funds, as well as research related funding.
Lori, I think one of the other things we should remember is that USDOT has a number of discretionary grant programs out there. Now they're still standing those programs up. But I think if we as a region put together a pretty good application and sort of a consortium idea that Mike's already laid out in this presentation, I would think we'd have a pretty decent chance at maybe getting some federal discretionary money that could help move this along as well. This would seem to be in their wheelhouse.
Yeah, that's a good point. Cole, I'm interested in, is the city of Austin doing anything towards this already?
Probably not the best person to try to answer that. But if our director Spiller is still on, he may.
Rob actually left. Rob Spiller actually left already.
I know that Texas State has a similar program, not so much on the transportation side, I don't believe, more on the community side of interlinking smart technology in the home too, that they've approached the city of San Marcos about. So Mike and Heidi, have you had any other discussions with any of the surrounding universities on how this might work cooperatively?
We haven't yet. We're still in the process of, coming up with a concept plan, and we're starting the business plan preparation. So certainly collaborating with other universities is something that we're always excited about doing, and we'd be happy to talk to Texas State to see how that could, how we could work together.
Well, Laurie, I'm familiar with what other universities are doing also in this area, and that's why I think this is kind of this concept really kind of coalesces a very focused transportation use case. So one thing I've learned about technology in the last year is everybody's all over the place, and they all have their own interests. Where this effort would allow us as a region to really focus on transportation solutions, and so it would really kind of put it all together in one package and give some coherence to it.
Okay. Are you all going to present to the policy board, or Ashby, how would this move forward for policy direction?
Mike and I have had a couple of conversations about that, and I'm anticipating that they will be on the May policy board agenda to talk to the board and so we can get some sense from the board what they think about this idea. Also, we can present the board with the idea of do they think this warrants a TAC subcommittee, which, by the way, I support. And then I think this would also be a way to sort of place a marker out there for the board that once the deferred projects have been, funding has been restored to all those deferred projects, that we could potentially be looking at this coming in as part of the a new project for potential future funding.
I really liked your idea about some of those DOT grants, because I think that the Austin region has already situated itself very favorably in that, and with the UT Austin system behind it and a consortium, I think that would be great if we could pull in those federal dollars. I'd want to make sure on the tax subcommittee we handled it kind of like the TDM, where if there is someone in the department or the city or county, the public entity that has a stronger knowledge base than just the TAC representative, that they could sit on that subcommittee so we could get the best people in there.
Yeah, I agree, Lori. I think that would be the way to go on that, and I'm sure that's what TxDOT and CTR want as well.
Okay, any other questions on this? All right, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Heidi, so much.
Oh, Lori, I'm sorry. I had my hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy. Go ahead.
That's fine. I just had a quick question. I think this is a great concept. It looks like it's focused primarily on urban, which is reasonable, but I think it would go a lot further if you had a way to address more rural applications as well, if there are some, a wider spread, a regional spread. And then one somewhat related question that I have is electric vehicle infrastructure. That's one of the emphasis areas for the IIJA, and I thought that all the states are supposed to come up with an electric infrastructure plan, and I didn't know where TxDOT is with that or what's going on. But locally too, I mean, at least for electric vehicles, if we don't have the infrastructure, we're not going to get very far with it. So that's something that everybody could start planning for. And can we do a regional effort working towards that as well?
So I kind of glossed over it really quick, but Kathy, to your point, you're exactly right. Most of our, severe crashes and fatalities happen in rural areas. And so we do have some setups on the closed circuit to actually simulate that, especially in curves and two-way traffic and intersection that we see frequently on county roads and rural FM roads. So we definitely want to reach the whole gamut, and there's nothing to say that we don't go further outside that open bed test bed. These are just initial concepts, but with participation by folks like yourself on how we define use cases like rural use cases, we can capture all that. On the electric charging front, that's a whole other presentation I can provide later on, but there is a charging sustainability part to Smart Track, if I remember correctly. And so we're definitely looking at that, and not only we're looking at electric charging, but also generation and using a right of way for solar power and storage for generating and transmitting for electric charging here in the region.
Great, thank you.
I could talk about that in a whole other thing.
Excellent, glad to hear it. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathy. Anybody else? Okay, then. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Heidi.
Good to see you, Laurie.
Good to see you. All right, now we've all been waited with bated breath for Gary. Item number 6.
That might not have been your best option. So just to briefly update the TAC, we had our second meeting of the TDM last month. Still not a lot to, we're still doing a lot of groundwork. There's been some outreach efforts that the consultants, Matt with Urban Transit has been doing. The upcoming opportunity for the TAC to get directly involved, we'll have a survey that will come out to the TAC in the near future. And when we met last month, we did a little exercise of a travel persona exercise that we were all assigned certain personas, if you will, student, business person, regional delivery type person, all these different personas. And we had a little exercise of congestion versus mobility, what really the primary need was, and it placed us in kind of a grid as to where we fell. So again, still gathering a lot of background information. To date, the meetings have been very ad hoc as we were nervous working with the consultant to try and really get some structure to the opportunity. And so now we'll move into meetings. We'll have meetings every other month. We're intending to meet the week or so before the TAC meeting so that we'll have the latest information and activity to update the TAC. So that's it. Not a lot going on other than, again, the survey will be out and really are hoping and really have the desire for the TAC members to make sure they're paying attention to that survey and pushing it out, giving us some helping us get some traction with the survey. Nirav, did I miss anything?
No, Gary, you got it.
Anybody have any questions for Gary or Nirav? Okay, well, we'll get you next time.
Yeah, that's a challenge. There you go.
All right, Chad, report on planning activities and Ashby.
Yeah, thanks, Lori. So I'll start with that. We'll hand it over to Nirav in a second, but first, I just wanted to introduce our regional planning manager, Will Liska. There you go, Will. Say, everyone, say hi to your fans. Will be managing long-range planning aspects. So, most of the managers here will be involved in many of the RFPs and the RFQs that we've talked about over the past year, but we'll typically focus on long-range planning aspects, and of course, that'll include managing updates to the long-range plan, and already starting to think about our ideas for the 2050 plan as well. So I just want to introduce him and then hand it over to Will to talk about our corridor, GEC, and our other procurements that are ongoing.
Thank you, Chad. Good afternoon, everyone. And I believe I've had a chance to meet many of you before, but to those I haven't, I look forward very much to working with you. As Chad mentioned, we have several procurements that are currently ongoing that I wanted to touch on. First, the regional freight study. We received 3 consultant proposals for this RFP, and we'll be providing a recommendation to the policy board for selection at the April meeting. Another procurement that we currently have open, the interchange bottleneck study, as we kind of touched on earlier, the window for that one is currently open until this Friday, April 1st. After that, CAMPO and TxDOT staff will begin to review and score those proposals. And then I want to provide a quick update on the corridor readiness program. Just to assure everybody, neither CAMPO nor the consultants begun any work on the program because we're still waiting on the final AFA from TxDOT. Those were the 3 procurements I wanted to touch on now. We'll definitely have more to update you on in the coming months, though.
And then, Nirav, do you have the demographics dashboard update?
Yes, tomorrow I will send out a link to the TAC for the demographics dashboard. We'll also ask for comments back from the TAC after about 3 weeks. And given that it's not just transportation related, I encourage y'all to share the dashboard link with any experts you have within your agencies regarding demographics, housing, what have you. And I really encourage y'all to do that and look forward to your comments back in 3 weeks. Thanks.
Lori, I had a couple of things I wanted to cover quickly. One is I'm chairing a Transportation Research Board committee on equity that's supposed to help inform some of the discretionary grant programs. We started talking to USDOT staff that review and score the discretionary programs, and we've also been talking to local governments that have applied for discretionary grant programs and gotten awards, and we're asking them how they assessed equity in their applications. And we're getting sort of answers all over the board, which I sort of expected. But, I'm bringing this up to y'all, one, because I told y'all I would give you briefings on this committee as we move forward. And we've had 3 meetings so far. The other reason I'm bringing it up is I'm going to be contacting some of y'all, just to see what you're doing, as local governments and sort of get a sense of, are these things that we need to bring forward to that committee, as testimony to give them an idea of how, equity can be incorporated into the project development and planning processes. So, if you've got stuff already and it's documented, that's great. Could you call me, email me, and let me know, and we can set up a time to talk through it. But yeah, expect to start hearing from me soon on that, because I'd like to use that to help inform the report that the committee is going to issue, but also to inform the work that CAMPO does as we start to work towards the next plan and the next tip. Then the other thing, as some of you probably know, every 4 years we're supposed to go through what's called a certification review. And that review is done by the Federal Highway Administration staff and the Federal Transit Administration staff here in Texas. And it's required for every MPO that's over 200,000 in population. So the last certification review we had was in 2018. So we're due this year. We've worked out dates with Federal Highway Administration as of this morning. So the review will be in late June. As part of the review, there is a public hearing. It is not our meeting as CAMPO, it's Federal Highways meeting. We help them set it up, but it's not our meeting. So we will be notifying y'all and the public about that as it gets closer. Also, one of the things that happens during the certification review is that Federal Highway and Federal Transit like to interview some of the policy board members. And so if you've got policy board members that are interested, please let me know. Right now, where I'm heading is I will probably ask the current officers of the policy board if they are willing and able to be interviewed during the time slot as a starting point. But usually Federal Highways doesn't want more than 3 or 4 people to interview. They may ask for TAC members. They haven't in the past, but if they do and you're interested, let me know, please.
Okay, well, that's very interesting about the equity piece and ties a little bit with, I know that the city of San Marcos had reached out to City of Austin folks on their accident data and some of their uses, and in another meeting on their equity program in the city of Austin. And I know that Cole, I am blanking on his name, had asked about presenting to the TAC some of the data that the city of Austin has found in their accident data that actually has a link to equity. Cole, can you share that?
Right. Lewis Leff is our Vision Zero safety officer.
And so I would like if we could to have them present to us. I think it helps particularly some of the smaller communities think about equity and how there might be a link in terms of some of their accident data, particularly, you know, how we're looking at the dashboard now. The other request I've had has been from the Great Springs Trail Project. They would like to make a presentation at some point to the TAC. And so I'd like a little feedback whether other members have any interest in either of these presentations, or Ashby, whether there's a different format for them to do to request coming to the TAC.
I can't think of a different format, Lori. I think the equity I think an item on the future agenda on equity would be very good, and we could bring in the person from ATD, but potentially also other people. That's a broad topic, and I think we need to have the discussion. As far as Great Springs, let's visit.
Okay. All right. And then, Ashby, where do you see the workshop? I know you talked about an education workshop on some of the grant programs coming up. What's the timing that you feel on that, and how might the equity piece roll in with that?
I still don't know the timing about potential workshops. I did talk to Federal Highways this morning about providing a briefing to TAC and the policy board on the new federal bill, and they are willing to do that. So we're looking at a May time frame for that. But as far as the details of the discretionary grant program, they've not written rules. They don't, in some cases, they've got to write code, regs. They haven't started that yet. It's got to go through the process. I just don't have a good sense of timing right now. I'm hopeful we can have one by fall.
All right. So then, in terms of other announcements, as you saw on your agenda, the policy board meeting is April 11th, and then our next TAC meeting will be April 25th. So does anybody have anything else they'd like to add? All right. Bob has been awfully quiet today. All right. If I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Gary Hutter.
Second, Bob Day.
All right.
I knew I'd get him to talk, Lori. Right away.
Oh, that's good to know. He's still alive in his chair. So, all right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
You.